potential for especially for policy implementer, because now that in this dynamic world, everything is uncertain. So in this regard, it requires innovative thinking, a new way, or thinking out of box. To do that, everybody should equip with the necessary knowledge and the skill. So this kind of platform have strong potential to enhance the capacity of especially the Ministry of Education to develop programs, policy, initiative, and also to acquire basic capacity to implement those initiatives. The other thing which I'm very much emphasized here is because of uncritically borrowed policy, our education system paid much. We borrow uncritically many programs in our education system. That is why, because of the absence of this kind of platform, getting knowledge, thinking innovatively, and also giving exposure for educational planners, experts, this kind of information sharing. So for me, I think this kind of platform have a big impact for the ministry to enhance the capacity, especially to implement the policy and programs. So thank you so much for having me in this platform. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wogaso. Thank you all for bringing the relevance of this platform and for helping to use better improve the education system in Ethiopia. My second question is about knowledge and scalable innovation. What knowledge and scalable innovations can Ethiopia contribute to the HAPS regional platform? This time I can start with Adominian.
Ethiopia can share a lot of knowledge and scalable practices. As you know, we are the third population in Africa. More than 110 million people lives in Ethiopia. You can see how dynamic practices can be generated from these peoples. But currently, still we have a drawback of managing knowledge. So we are working on how can we manage knowledge. So one of the major things that we are trying to do in this regard is capturing every information from the traditional up to the scientific aspects. So really soon we will have a lot of practices that can be generated by processing these information being captured. You know that it's an era of big data, not the era of information currently. So if we succeed by doing what we started so far, we can share a lot of practices and a lot of knowledge, not for the region, to the world. Even we can have such things. But currently, our tasks are not yet completed.
Thank you very much, to William.
Okay, thank you very much. What really Ethiopia shares the knowledge and scalable to the other country. Some of the scalable and can adapt the other countries is one is our EMIS system, what Million said. There is a very comprehensive in this system, though the data quality and other limitations are there, but it is very comprehensive, including the refugee education system. In most countries, as far as my knowledge, is not captured in the normal education, annual education system. Now, it is captured in part and parcel of the system to ensure no one behind as a human being. Therefore, this is one of the skeleton that countries adapt and take as a lesson from Ethiopia. The other issue, which is scalable, is based on a very rigorous research, what is presented before by Dr. Johannes. Almost all Ethiopian scholars were conducting nearly 3 years. What is really our Ethiopian education system? What is the federal? What is the census? Based on that, it is developed an education roadmap that can be translated into policy shift, that can be translated into curriculum, that can be translated into plan. So these are some of the areas. And the other issue is changing and transforming of the teacher training system, because it is the center of the education system. So transforming, the government of Ethiopia is now currently working, teaching as a profession of choice. And the best student is to be a teacher. So we are working this to transform our education system, because it is the software to transform it. These are some of the lessons that can be taken by other countries. Thanks so much.
Okay, Dr. Johannes, if you allow, I go to Johannes to share his ideas on that. Dr. Johannes, yes, please go ahead.
Sorry, because of the echo, I couldn't able to hear properly. So could you able to repeat it?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Did you hear the question?
What?
Did you hear the question?
No.
The question is,
Please repeat it.
what knowledge and scalable innovations can Ethiopia contribute to the KIX regional platform? Did you hear that?
Yeah, of course, I'm not as such confident enough to say that Ethiopia have a firm stand to share for the other country, but in terms of reducing internal efficiency, we have a good lesson, not only improving the internal efficiency, but also during the COVID-19 period, Ethiopia tried to implement some sort of strategy which have strong potential to contain the spread of the virus while we set protective measures. For instance, during the COVID-19 period, of course, still we are in the new normal. Though we are in the new normal, we consider, COVID-19 period means during the school closure period. At the time, we set 3 issues. One, in order to contain the spread of the virus, one, the student classroom ratio supposed to be 1:20. That means one classroom should serve for 20 students. The other thing we said, in the distance between the 2 students should be at least 2 meters. So this obliged us to use 1 desk for 1 student. And the other thing, the other protective measure we deploy was wearing face mask. At the time, deploying this whole strategy was not as such easy for the Ethiopian government because it required too much budget. For instance, in order to implement 1:20, the student classroom ratio, it requests us around 90,000 classroom, additional classroom. That was not as such easy for us to plant 90,000 classroom, but we said public mobilization strategy. That means constructing classroom by using the resource of our community. So we have planted more than 77,000 classroom. That is not with the government treasure. This is simply by mobilizing our community. So mobilizing the community might have a strong potential for the other nation, for the other government to implement or to improve the education sector development program. The other thing was the problem at the time was deploying the necessary school furniture. And even school furniture, more than 100,000 school desks were distributed at the time, not only by using the government resource, but also by mobilizing stakeholders, not only the community, by the way. When I say stakeholders, that's not only the community, but also other industries, social sectors, and the like, exposed to support the education sector. Because of that, we just distributed more than 100,000 desks and the furniture. This might be the aforementioned best lesson that can be considered as a best lesson for other countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yohannes. Now, Dr. Yohannes.
I think my colleagues already mentioned, but just 2 points. The in-depth research that was made to inform the current reform. This is, I think, that can be scaled up because there was a wide variety of discussions on this, even including other sector ministries. The other point I want to make is like the school feeding program, for example. There was a small initiative, but that was scaled up to the level of policy. So this is the attempt. Whether we can do it or not is we will see in the future, but the issue of school feeding at primary level is very useful because this majority of the children are absent from school because of the feeding. So school feeding can be, can become considered, can be taken from Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you very much again for the inputs and for sharing some innovation. So thank you for sharing some innovation and some important research that can be shared with other governments, other countries. Thank you very much. Now we come to the questions. I have received the first set of questions, but all the questions are addressed to Dr. Yohannes. The first one is from Alpha Blah from the Gambia. He's asking, measuring violence is critical and emerging in school census data collection, but this is a challenge. Beyond asking about the availability of policies around school-based violence, what are the other additional indicators that you measure on violence? How do incidences of violence recorded and kept at the data source level? Let me go to all the questions and then you answer the part. Another question is, why was the index education research collected by the key stakeholders not endorsed? What lessons do we need to learn to avoid similar situations like that? Yet more funds are needed to support the education research agenda. And the third question, why do we applaud the government for the tremendous efforts to increase access to education? How have the Ethiopian Teachers Association engaged in service teachers in social dialogues to talk about quality improvement and quality assurance in order to achieve learning outcomes? I think I read it clear for questions. Please go ahead, maybe you collect more questions after. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the questions. Okay. Thank you for the questions. It means that my presentation has clicked in into the minds of the listeners. A minute earlier, this question is frequent, by the way. When I present these issues in other platforms also, they ask, how can you measure violence? Violence can be measured. This was based on the evidence collected, and that was deliberated, discussed thoroughly, and we came up on those kinds of indicators. As I said, there are 4 dimensions. Under each one of the dimensions, there are indicators produced, which can be measured based on the Likert scale. So there are indicators already developed, and this will be understood when you read the full document. In terms of regarding the incidences, there are formats developed, which is available in the document. There are discipline procedures. So there are formats developed already to track the record, and then it's already available in that specific schools. By the way, each school has a guidance to, in the document, in the school violence index, there's a guideline to record the incidences of violence, and then that can be put in a database. The second question is, by the way, let me mention, there was also another project at continental level where 7 African Teachers Union were involved in. The title of, I can remember, the title of the project was Education Unions Can Take Action to End School Violence. That was supported by the Canadian government, facilitated by United Nations Girls Education Initiative and Education International, our global organization. So really, it was a very good lesson. This project has much to do with our activity already done. And that's why I shared this outcome at, in Senegal some 2-3 years ago. So my good friend, Dr. Tulaya Gete, who was a former Minister of Education, who is now representing Ethiopia at UNESCO headquarters, has declared in one education congress to use this guideline and to consult Ethiopian Teacher Association in school violence. So some regions have also recognized our activity, and we were even awarded the cup of this activity. So this school violence is an ongoing problem, both in Ethiopia and other Africa and everywhere in the globe. School bullying, there are lots of violence which hinder girls and even male education. So it's good to work on this at the scalable level. The second question I want to address is, what is not endorsed yet is the education policy, which was really drawn from the endorsed research, in-depth research. But other documents, for example, the 10-year education plan was endorsed. This was from the deep research, that was from the education roadmap, I can say. The curriculum reform also, which is already, I think, finalized, a series of debates on this one. So what is not yet endorsed is only the educational training policy, which we expect to be endorsed soon. So what lessons can we learn? I think the UNESCO is supposed to check whether the teacher's voice is included in the project activities, not only in Ethiopia. In my capacity as a member of the Education International Africa Region Committee, teacher organizations in other countries are also, it's good that they have their input in the project activities on regarding education. The other is the third question, I think, in terms of social dialogue, for example. Well, Ethiopian Teacher Association, there is a need to work further when it comes to social dialogue, but we were involved in many activities of education activities in Ethiopia. For example, I mentioned earlier in my presentation that myself was represented in a national council that was established to look after some key issues which requires decision of high officials. I can also mention about the licensing and licensing directive that is underway, of course. In the draft, the directive, the state minister was the chair for this, for the licensing council, and the Ethiopian Teacher Association is the deputy chair for the council. So I think the Minister of Education is trying to involve ETA to the extent possible. I can also mention, for example, the involvement of teachers' voice in the education system of this country. For example, there was a very wide discussion, close to 4 million or 3.8 million of the Ethiopian population have discussed on the education problems, education shortage in this country, based on, and just to develop the roadmap, this the so-called roadmap. There's a mistake to understand what is roadmap, what is education plan, like that. So the roadmap, to my understanding, is decaying itself to other documents, to the education training policy, to the 10-year education plan, and to the education standard development plan for that matter. So there was a wide discussion with the teachers, with academia at the university level, with other sector ministries, even including the military. So trying to include the teachers' voice to improve quality learning is something good, but when it comes to social dialogue at national level, there is something to work on. We have a lot of issues in our minds, which we also discuss with the government and the Ministry of Education in the future. Thank you very much.
Question, comments from the previous presentation, and also if you have something to add from points raised from the panel discussion. But I may ask you to come here. Otherwise, it won't be audible for Johannes. Unless we text him, if you have a question, maybe you will let us know so that we can send a text for the microphone, please.
Please be concise for the sake of time.
Actually, thank you very much for the chance. I have a very interesting questions, but the time is almost out of time in the calendar. It's almost so, but this the point I want to ask is there are some concerns that should be addressed in this platform, especially for perhaps the experience of the lesson that physical maybe take 2 hours. African countries, in my understanding and my experience, can take just not still, and this is still no evidence that shows the commitment of the teachers, Ethiopian teachers, because Ethiopian teachers now, as you know, are underpaid and under very difficult situations. So we can, if we measure the balance, we can measure the commitment of the teachers. So we can take as a distance for the other African countries the content of the teachers. And the issue with, I think Mr. Johannes is waiting that he has no confidence to speak on the experience that other African countries take, but the general parity is, you can see the general parity is, we have almost around 17 years students. So especially the primary and the middle schools is almost a moderate. So it's very big and manageable, but we access education for those educations. Before 2 months ago, I present Ethiopian girls education experience in nearly majors in African universities. So we can share some materials. So but I have a question. I raised some question on the chat box, and sorry, I'm out of time. That's why.
Thank you.
I tried this one.
Thank you, Chairman. I thank all presenters for their presentation. I do have two questions to forward for the first two presenters. The first one is Dr. Johannes. My question is from the research as he present for us. There are a number of research centers that is recommended to improve the quality of education in Ethiopia. So my question is, to what extent we push the higher officials as well as the policymakers to take the findings and the recommendation as well to implement it to improve the quality of the education in Ethiopia. So to what extent we push higher officials and the policymakers to take these findings and implement, because from the findings I have seen there are a lot of good information as well as human, finance, as well as material resources are invested by the association. So this has to be taken into consideration to implement. The other, my question is, because Johannes Lucaso, if you hear me, thank you for your again presentation, Johannes. You touch a good topic, particularly current one. You addressed the impact as well, the effects of COVID on Ethiopian education, its impact, its effect. You try to address the negative impacts. You try to discuss for us its negative impact on the dropouts, enrollments, and so on. So my question is, what are some of the harmful benefits of COVID? What lesson we learn from it in the future? So if you tell us some points regarding its harmful benefits, and as well for our future, it helps us to share information as well as your innovations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. The first intervention was the contribution, and the second one is a couple of questions. One to Dr. Johannes, and another one to Dr. Johannes. So Dr. Johannes, please go ahead.
So thank you again for the questions. I mean, yeah, this is a very big question. What we do is, as I said, we invite ministers or deputy ministers, state ministers in our case. They come to our sessions, they give opening speech. What I'm talking now is opening speech is not enough. We need experts to be part of the meeting. Stay there from beginning to end and hear from the horse's mouth and take that recommendations, record those recommendations, and possibly take copy of the presentation and include into the directives. To what extent do you push to officials? We go to their office and we provide copies of the proceeding and the research outcome in their hands. Let me mention the recent ones. We congratulated the new minister when he was appointed recently, and we took an appointment to him, and I went to his office with my other colleagues. We had the time and discussed with him, and we handed over a copy of the proceeding, the latest one. And also, just before the present minister, we went to the office. We submitted a copy of, for example, the global framework
With the state minister also a copy of the proceedings and research outcome. It's up to you, the experts, to ask them whether they have forwarded them to you and whether it is available in their office. We also submitted the proceedings to the Prime Minister office. Okay. I don't know whether they have considered it or not. That is why in my presentation I said we are going to now audit the documents, whether that have captured. But one thing I have to mention and one thing I have to acknowledge is we have conducted the primary school teacher preparation challenge prospects and so forth. I think one of the recommendations was that teachers at primary level should not be recruited from grade 10. Mind you, this research was done before the completion of the so-called roadmap. And that was agreed. In some regions even, have started recruiting primary school teachers who have already completed grade 12, even in the formal education system. So now the roadmap has considered that recruitment for primary school teacher as a criteria should be those who completed grade 12. So this is something positive. But there are a lot of research that have been done earlier. But it should be considered not only during policy revision. We need to consider these research outcomes to change our practices. So I think that is the gap. So I think the Ministry of Education, not only, it shouldn't always request us to push, but also ask us whether we have documents, whether we have research already done. Sometimes we see duplications for that matter. Research is already there. Why not possible to draw from academia, for example? Students do research for thesis, for the requirement for PhDs also, dissertation. They can collect. There are a lot of resources available in universities, but organizing these research documents, for that matter, I don't know if Ministry of Education has a research department or research directorate or, I mean, yeah. So I think there is very rethinking education is important. So we try our level best. We use our, this is an advocacy organization as well. Fortunately, we also, I myself has a different experience at continental and global level. There are a lot of chances to consult other higher officials other than the ministry as well. So we try our level best, but we also need your support as experts. When you do when you prepare directives, for example, when you prepare documents, of course we participate in documents. I have to acknowledge. See, people who are attending this session should understand that we participate in document preparation directives when the Ministry of Education prepares documents, but including into practices and document and policies need as the work. Thank you.
Maybe your question is for who? Okay. I just wanted to know because I
Sorry, thank you for this opportunity. Well, I think I want to add some more points with regard to the issues raised about the research findings. I agree with you, Dr. Johannes. There are research conducted by different scholars that mostly they are sheltered, and using the findings is very minimal. We agree by this issue. But I think you raised the problems, some of the problems, but not only the problem of the higher officials or the higher management bodies, but also, when you find the researcher has to recommend possible solutions.
and that solutions mostly are not feasible in most cases. Prescribing a medicine or a solution for something may be easier for the researcher, but in most cases, the recommendations, the solutions that are suggested by the scholars may be difficult to actually implement in reality in a short time. So, in most of the recommendations are not feasible and actionable, and that might need much more resource and extra knowledge and inputs, and then due to that case, in most cases, research are not implemented. This may be one observation from me, because there are research findings, but for the sake of research, they will present some research, but they are not implemented as the Dr. Van said. So then I think one of the problems is this one. And the other problem may be we are not properly disseminating the results for the proper user. In most cases, research findings will not reach to the users. Maybe the ministry has to take as a takeaway for this for discussion. We have to have a research team, and we have to collect that valuable findings from different scholars, from different annual conferences, and then they have to put together, they have to sit together and select those action points that are feasible, and in short term, long term, or maybe some of the findings can be answered by policy gaps. Therefore, this is my reflection, my recommendation. And I think for one question for Dr. Johannes, because we are running out of time, I know. Well, in our system, the major challenge is the quality of the education system. And the teachers are the key for improving our quality of education system. And the key, the cursor for improving the quality of education. So to this regard, even when we see the quality of teachers themselves and the result from the assessment results of teachers is minimal. So if there are any findings or if there are any plan to improve the quality of teachers themselves, to improve our system, because the key for every improvement learning outcome is teacher. So in your annual conference, in your discussions or your findings, is there any critical findings that improve the quality of teachers, or is there any research findings regarding the quality of teachers from your annual proceedings and annual, or from your research findings? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. It was very interesting. I'll give the floor to Dr. Johannes, but at the same time, I'll follow the question addressed to Dr. Johannes. What lessons did we learn from COVID-19, and what can we take as a lesson for the future interventions? This is for Dr. Johannes. So I give the floor to Dr. Johannes first.
Shall I proceed?
Yes, go ahead, please. It's okay. Go ahead, Dr. Johannes.
All right. I think now it is that I know that you are committed your lunchtime, so I want to emphasize with three basic lessons. The first thing is this COVID-19 creates some sort of opportunity for our education system. That means it enhanced our capacity to implement the program effectively and efficiently. The evidence I have to say this is, for instance, during the first 2 weeks of school closure, almost all regional education bureau were in position to digitalize all textbook to be transmitted for radio and the TV program. That was a wonderful, management capacity. And some of them were already broadcasted those digitalized learning content through their regions, TV and radio, through their regions mass media. That was the lesson we have learned during the COVID-19 period. Other thing is we believe that the existing technology have a strong potential to boost the teaching and the learning process. For instance, during school closure, our schools were used in some areas, especially in urban areas, they were used WhatsApp, Telegram, and other social media to transfer knowledge, to transfer the lesson. So that might be considered as a good opportunity. Before COVID-19, we were not even in position to look the advantage of those technology. While Facebook, WhatsApp, and the Telegram still we used for other purpose, we were not in position to deploy those technology in our teaching and learning system. So that was a wonderful opportunity we have learned during COVID-19 period. And the second one is considering the potential of our community for improving the education sector development. The evidence I'm just claiming for this is what I mentioned even in my presentation is we have constructed more than 73,000 classrooms by using our community resource. So using community resource, we were not in position even to mobilize our community in this regard. So we have learned that, the potential contribution of our community to that extent. So this might be a good example of the lesson we have learned during the COVID-19 period. So based on by using those lessons, we just use this lesson for our future intervention, especially in my department, which I belongs for, school improvement. We developed a PACO model, partnership and the cooperation model. Partnership and the cooperation model basically emphasize that all schools have a big resource, the packed resource. The community is a big resource. All things surrounding schools can be considered as a good resource for schools. So schools have a strong potential to improve the teaching and the learning process by using partnership and cooperation model. Through partnership, they can mobilize the community resource. Through partnership, they can use this technology. Through partnership, they can immensely participate, different scholars, even calling them to schools and participate in the teaching and the learning process. So we used, the lesson we learned during COVID-19, we framed them and we call it PACO, partnership and the cooperation model. And we are also introducing this PACO model in all regional education bureau. And this year, we supposed to deploy this PACO model for 300 pilot schools to transfer from level 2 to level 3 and from level 1 to level 2. That is the lesson we have learned so far. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Johannes.
Thank you all. Thank you very much once again. When I'm asked questions, I'm getting vocal and my teacher's voice and my teacher leadership voice. Let me be specific with that way in regards question. I understand the concept when the researchers are just from the community, they know what they can, what can be implemented and what can be implemented immediately, what can be thought about for the future. There are some recommendations, of course, that may seem difficult to implement immediately. But sometimes policymakers may use this one as a compromise. Let me mention with the examination, for example. We will share you the document. You may not have the document with you. On the issue of academic cheating, what recommendation has come up with that? When students cheat, for example, what we do is simply we cancel the grade. Okay? Suppose that the student was reported while cheating. So what we do is simply you cancel the grade A, right? But the recommendation has come up with further measure, for example, like MEY. You can put that kind of so other countries can do that. They were doing that. For example, in Kenya, I heard that there is a punishment with some dollars or something. It's possible to do in this country. This is possible recommendation, but we have never made that. The other point is, do you ever discuss on teacher quality issues, teacher programs, for example, in improving quality of education? Yes, there's ample research available in our hands. We can provide them with you. When it comes to teachers, then we don't go into debate about the egg and the hen issue. You see, the egg becomes the hen. Okay, so are we really properly preparing teachers? Okay. Well, we need to collaborate with the ministry to have quality teachers. Once the qualified teacher comes in, we have to motivate. You see? Now, when motivation comes, when this is difficult, the country is poor, you cannot implement this one, then if education is expensive, try economics. I understand, I know Ethiopia is allocating very big sum of money, the government budget, like Mustafa has mentioned. But the still education system is struggling. When you go to schools, we have difficulty of inputs, very minor ones. One huge money allocated, but when it is distributed with 41 schools, 41,000 schools. I mentioned in my presentation, we have 37 school institutions in Ethiopia. But he has mentioned that he has recent data now because he is from EMIS. This is horse's mouth when it comes to data. 41 school institutions. When we distribute that money into schools, then where is it? Well, the non-partner are supporting, but when it comes to schools, there's very few. So we need to mobilize some more money. Why requesting the government to increase the government budget? The government budget is not enough. I know decreasing one budget from one sector brings increasing to the other. All sectors need money, but education is a priority. Education is a priority, the key. So we advocate for the government to increase the government budget, but also we have to also mobilize this from inside. But also the development partners should contribute their commitment should fulfill their commitment to increase financing. And at the end of the HDB reports, this much money came from the development partners, this much money came from everyone is not fulfilling this commitment. So yes, we have a number of research reports regarding teacher quality and teacher performance, teacher activities, that teachers should improve their roles, should live to their profession maximum possible. They have to shape the generation, the citizen, but also at least minimal support in terms of motivation is also important for teachers. So that yes, as Kendra has mentioned, Ethiopian teachers are committed because they are performing in difficult situations. I can report 100 pages of how they are doing their level best. But they also need support. Even if it is, you cannot provide something equal to their motivation, something equal to their commitment. Thank you very much.
you allow me compassion, because I haven't had like a mic without saying anything about the research and how we use the research in our country. And I know all of you know that even at Saba University, for one PhD program, it assigned a budget of around 40,000 for a student for a PhD candidate to do his or her own research. But we never use that research. And I'm wondering when maybe, I think now the history on that kind of restructuring, and I don't know where the research department will fall, maybe controlling one of the directorates, which are the existing one, maybe quality assurance, I don't know. But I think from the other countries' experience, and this is something that we also as a colleague at the ministry need to advocate to have, because from others' experience, sometimes there is a challenge on data, and there's also a false research, which I also agree at some point with Eliza. But we need some kind of mechanism to control that. Countries have their own way of mechanism to control this. For us, I think it's just open. Somebody can come from abroad and do research and publish that research without the knowledge of the ministry or without the knowledge of the higher education or even the universities. So this is also a risk for us. But in the meantime, we are also missing so many research. When I did my research, I read a lot of research on teachers and quality education and so on. But I don't think we are using it to the extent that we should use that, because we don't have as such an organized hub that can, manage, control, and assure the qualities of this research. So maybe this might be also an opportunity for us, just at least to bring it to the attention of those officials, to the ministers, that we really need a department, at least, or a section who manages research and Victoria?
I still have to read some of these things because as once upon a time teacher, I taught for so many years at all levels, and I also have done designer. The issues are similar even in my own country where I come from. And we realize that we're generating a lot of research, but we're not using that research. So we had gone to the ministry, especially the state education department, to deliberately create a forum for sharing research. And when I was hearing about the World Teachers Day, that's what we pitched our presentation of the research on. And we said before the World Teachers Day, we have to have a teacher education teacher symposium, a big event. And we asked everybody who has done something around research to share, to showcase what they have done. And in that big symposium, you find that it would invite the ministers and all these other people. It's all about teaching, improving the quality of teaching, and making sure that we realign the teaching profession according to emerging issues. So I think we just have to be creative and innovative. Frankly speaking, the funds will never be enough from the governments. But how do we make our voice out there on a deliberate effort? And raise some of these issues to those that matter. So I just want to encourage us as educationists, just creative. And the good thing that once you come up with such initiatives, the development partners no one will support something like that. They will bring in funding because it will bring about their visibility to the front or to the fore. So I think we just have to shift from, I think what is this word, from the area of lamentations, because we haven't had this education sector. Oh, this is not working. Oh, this is not working. We do that a lot. But then start to be very, very creative. How do we deliberately think about strategies to bring on board? There's always money. UNICEF, UNESCO, these agencies. When you know about the symposium conference, things like that, and there are money to show up so that at least we can be able to showcase what we are doing out there. I know that there's a lot of good work we're doing, and I'm so happy that we're having this round today to discuss some of these issues. So I just want to say thank you very much for being open, but let us be creative. Thank you. Oh, the last bit. I just want to say something that on teacher motivation. I have seen creativity along motivation. And I've also noticed that skill the private sector, which we rarely target as the education sector, are very passionate about motivation issues on teachers. For example, the best teacher, science teacher, whether, giving scholarships, exchange programs, anything like that. So we just need to be organized and then come up with some kind of a teacher motivation strategy. Like I mentioned, the government may not provide all that we need, but then there are other low-hanging fruits that we can people, because in several countries they have put in some of these things, invited the private sector, and they give awards. And then in South Africa, they are too much, they give cars to the best teachers, best science teacher, maths teacher, English teacher, and in a way it motivates other teachers to do what? To improve. So I think we just have to learn from other countries, and that's a good thing about the KIX Hub. Maybe we can organize a forum of teacher motivation. We know how the other countries are doing it, so that it can help us also to be creative and, think of alternative ways to motivate teachers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I wish we had more time because it is so interesting. But we have focused on some of us about lunch. But since we are not fasting, let us cut short and do lunch for 1 hour. We'll be back at 3. But I really appreciate the active participation and the relevant contributions of everybody. Regarding the fact that the education system in Ethiopia is ready to avail itself of what is available in the platform shared by the KIX Hub and also the Knowledge Innovation Exchange agenda. But since it is a question of giving and taking, the same way you take, the same way also you give. And at the takeaway, you have shared very important innovations, very important initiatives that other countries can avail themselves of. And also you have made case of relevant recommendations. Among the recommendations, you have giving voices, more voices to teachers, involving community, exploiting resources, community resources. And the most important aspect is how to exploit the researchers and how to involve national researchers in the research and use those results of the researchers to better the education system. So thank you very much. I'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you for those who are following online. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We come back.